Hi guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today's another fantastic day for an interview, and it's going to be an intriguing interview. I've got Lyn Delmastro-Thomson with me. Now, Lyn is an amazing woman who wrote a book about her own journey, and it is a journey to a certain degree about medical misdiagnosis. Now, here I am as a doctor bringing in a patient with medical misdiagnosis. Talk about kicking the hornet's nest. Okay, come on, let's be quite clear about that. Having said that, first of all, humans are amazing beings, and as doctors, we do our utmost and our best to get it right, but we can't always. So that's a preamble there. And what we want to do today, Lyn and I, want to look at her journey, and we want to draw conclusions from it and want to learn lessons from it, because there's so many lessons to learn. So guys, hang in there. This is no doctor beating. This is nothing one side or the other side. We both are strongly believing that polarization is bullshit. Let's bring everything together onto the table and actually see that we can come up with a beautiful combination of different healing methods and medicine practices that can allow each and every individual patient to get through whatever life throws at them and then come out the other side in a new and improved version. So that's what I like to do. That's what I hope I can achieve in my daily life as an anesthetist, and more importantly, so today as a host of Lyn Delmastro-Thomson. Welcome to my show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely right. So here you were when you were a little girl going to your mummy and said, look, one day I will write a book and I'm going to make sure that we all come around the table and we're going to be all fine. Said no girl ever.
No.
Who did you want to be when you grow up? Who was the young Lyn?
I think it changed a lot over time.
Yeah.
When I was pretty young, I actually was really into ballet. And so there was a part of me that wanted to be a ballerina.
Right.
And then I soon realized as I started getting older and going through puberty, I was like, I don't really have a ballerina body.
In the film, one of the actresses said, yeah, and then the girls came along and...
Yeah, exactly. And I was never I could never do full splits or anything like that. So it was like, I think it wasn't meant to be. And looking at that, it's like, it's fine because, your career is over by what age when you're a ballerina?
Oh, that's true. And then your joint replacements start happening one after the other. You're
exactly.
Quite right. You're quite right. So there went the ballerina dream. So
yes.
When you were a teenager, what did that then morph into? Who did you want to go?
I think I wasn't really sure in my teenage years. I was very into history. Oh. And ultimately that was what I pursued when I was in college. Cool. But when I was a teenager, I was kind of in that, I don't really know. I was very studious and, knew I wanted to go to college. But as far as where the end goal was, I didn't really know what that was.
And then what happened?
And then I went to college and I got a degree in history, and I went from that degree to let's get another degree in history. So.
Excellent. So did you become a female Indiana Jones and took the history into practical archaeology and things like that? Or did you take the history into teaching or into research? Where did you end up?
I wanted to go into teaching. I was pursuing a PhD in history and wanted to become a professor. Nice. And then kind of life had some other plans for me.
And that's exactly why you're on the show today. Although I could talk for hours on history. I'm a history nerd myself, so maybe there's another interview waiting. But today, let's talk about life and the interesting detour that it sent you on.
Yes.
Tell me more what happened, because it was around about the age of 25 when suddenly you were studious in the library mode and getting all engrossed and sucked up in this beautiful learning. And then what happened?
So I was 3 years into my graduate school program, and it was in the summer, and I actually was scheduled for elective surgery. So talking about the girls, they were something I wanted to have reduced at that time in my life.
Okay.
And so I had all of the pre-op process, that I went through. I went to see the surgeon, all the consultations, and then, you get to that end stage where it's like, okay, we're going to send you for your pre-op blood work, and then we'll see you tomorrow, which I'm sure you're well aware of as dealing with surgeries and, anesthesia. So I get the phone call the night before the surgery and, not expecting a phone call from my surgeon because I had seen him that day in the office. And he said, well, your pre-op blood work came back and there's something that looks abnormal in it. And then he quickly went into reassuring mode. He said, now don't panic quite yet, because sometimes lab errors happen and, things happen. So just take a deep breath. I'm going to have you just run back over to the hospital right now. They're going to draw another, couple tubes of your blood, and we'll do this again. So I do that, still with a little bit of panic in my mind. And get home, and they probably ran it stat. So probably within the hour, I get another phone call. And he said, yeah, I'm really sorry, Lyn. It's not a lab error. I can't do surgery on you. And I was left with not really knowing what was wrong, just that surgery was not safe at that moment, which opens the Pandora's box in your mind of well, what could be so wrong that they can't do surgery?
May I ask, at that time, you felt normal in yourself?
I totally felt normal. Okay. Yeah. I was other than nervous that I was going to have, surgery, I was healthy. Yeah. I was, excited that I was finally going to get this surgery that I wanted since I was probably 16.
Yeah. Right.
And, then all of a sudden it's like, what just happened? Curveball.
That's right. Obviously. And if you look back at that time, on that evening and the days before, you were not bruising easily, you were not tired. Did you sweat a lot at night? Nothing.
Not that I remember. There was nothing that stood out. It was just, it was I felt healthy, and ready to do this process.
Okay.
And he left me with, just go see your primary doctor as soon as you can, because he really couldn't tell me more. That wasn't his scope of practice. He's a plastic surgeon. He knows the parameters of when it's safe to do surgery, and then the rest is not my ballpark. Goes to see somebody else who can help you. So I think the next day I did get an appointment with my primary doctor, and didn't get a whole lot of information at that point either, just more lab tests. And, that's, of course, the process in the medical system is we got to run tests. We don't really know what's going on with you. We're just going to send you for tests. And the next thing I know, it was probably a day or two later, I get a phone call from a doctor who I've never met, which is the strangest experience that I think anybody listening could probably imagine. A doctor you don't know calling you is not a common thing. So as soon as I get this phone call from a doctor I've never heard, I'm starting to panic. And he said, are you having any symptoms? And he didn't even specify what kind of symptoms, how are you feeling today? And I said, well, other than, anxious and panicked that I don't know what's going on, I'm okay. And he said, okay, well, if you don't have any symptoms tonight, you can stay at home and sleep in your own bed and come meet me in the hospital. But if you have any symptoms tonight, please come to the hospital immediately. And I was so shell-shocked, looking back at this story, the me of now goes, why didn't you ask more questions of well, what should I even be looking for? But the me of that moment, who was just why is this strange doctor calling me, was oh, okay. And I spent the whole night not knowing what I should be worried about, what symptoms I should be looking for. I just, was is that a symptom? Is that a symptom? And because he told me nothing more. He just said, come see me tomorrow in the hospital unless you see something or you feel something in your body that doesn't feel right. So I make it through the night. I don't think I really slept very much that night and go check into the hospital the next day, and I meet him. And he said, well, we're thinking that maybe you clotted off the portal veins that drain the liver. And I was like, okay, well, that's not something that's supposed to happen. And he said, but we don't really know why. So we're going to do more tests, right? We've got to figure this out. And he sends in a hematologist to try and figure out like why I would have clotted off these veins.
Okay. So first of all, for those of you who are thinking, what the hell are they talking about? The moment that a plastic surgeon says, no, I don't want to earn money in the last second, that tells you a lot. Okay? So, right. The surgeons are there to cut and make money. That's what we do in private practice. End of the story. So the sheer fact that he was spooked meant that there was something not right and something that potentially is relating to your health. Now, I then need to make a compliment to my medical colleagues over there because the time frames that you mentioned are out of this world. They are very fast, very crisp, there is no fat to cut off anywhere. This is as fast as possibly you can do it. And that is really hard to do in a modern healthcare system where where we are all so bloody busy. I mean, we are all running on fumes. That's the reality of modern life in medicine. So I want to say wow. But with that wow comes also a degree of them playing it relatively loose, because you don't want to tell all the facts on the telephone. By the way, you have got, and then you come up with a diagnosis that basically potentially pulls the rug from underneath your feet, and it's scary. So therefore there is a process how to do that, and it's basically about sitting the patient down and basically explaining things, giving the right time, not just over the phone. By the way, you're fucked. Have a good day. See me tomorrow in the clinic. No, we don't do that. Okay. So that is maybe what was going on in the heads of my colleagues there and what are there. Now, the vena cava is the biggest vein that is just sort of before the heart, and it drains all the blood from the lower part of the body, and there's a superior vena cava that drains all the blood from the upper part of the body to the heart. Cool. Big, beautiful vessels, maybe not giving you the finger, but about that size. So, no, that doesn't clot off. Okay? There is no blood clot just sitting there. If that happens, that's a life and death scenario. So the sheer fact that you had that meant you were actually quite sick. So just giving you guys out there, you have got a patient who from the outside looks absolutely normal. On the inside is a bloody time bomb where potentially, which could go boom at any second. Take it from there, girl.
So the hematologist came in to start the kind of diagnostic process of what's the underlying cause of this clot. And first thing that he decided to do was the bone marrow biopsy. And that was a very traumatic experience for me because he told me that he was going to give me a local, and he said, all you'll feel is some pressure. And what I felt was not just some pressure. What I felt was pain, like a pain that I never thought I could experience in my body. And he had to stop because I couldn't tolerate what was happening. It was so painful. I couldn't hold still. And it was hard because I thought, how are you just describing this as some pressure? You know, did you experience this procedure and only feel pressure? It doesn't seem likely to me that a lot of people would experience it that way.
I had one of them done as part of a study, and it can feel like pressure. And in all fairness, I was quite sweaty afterwards because whilst there is most of the time there's a pressure, I had a healthy bone marrow. When they aspirate it out, it is like a toothache, like a nasty toothache in your lower back. And I got distracted, and it was okay. But I can see that some people who have got more pain sensors in there might actually say, "Thank you very much. That's a little bit more than pressure." So again, with every procedure, it goes from there to there. Some people say, "What the hell are you on about? That's nothing," and other people jump off the bed. So the whole range is there. I was the jump
off the bed, basically. You know.
But you've also had the uncertainty so far. You have no idea what's going on, and you turn into this human guinea pig. At least that feels like it, or pincushion. So Christ. So were they able to get enough of the bone marrow to make a diagnosis?
Not at that time. So basically at this point, I'm in a smaller town in California. And they said, when they knew that I had clotted off the portal veins, they said, we know the procedure to open this, but we've never done it here in this hospital. And so they made the decision, we need to transfer you to a bigger city and, a major medical center that's done this before. And I said, well, great. I'm glad that you don't want me to be the first one that you do of this. That was a good call. Thank you. So it was then the insurance game of they wanted to send me to a hospital in LA, and that hospital said, we won't take her unless her insurance will guarantee if she needs a liver transplant, they'll pay for it.
Exactly.
And then we found a different hospital in San Francisco that would take me and didn't require that guarantee of a liver transplant. So I got moved to a different hospital, and then they continued the process. So they opened up the veins, they went in and did basically what they do in your heart with a balloon opening up the veins. And then they continued to figure out, okay, we have to do a bone marrow biopsy on her because we never got a sample. And they sedated me a lot more and, gave me a lot of pain medications and made it so that at least I could get through it instead of just, it was intolerable. And that was probably between all of the tests and, the procedure to open things up. We're at about 10 days in that hospital because it also was over like a holiday period here in the summer. It was over the 4th of July in the US. So everything was slowed, because there were less staff and I was in that lucky time window.
But it is 10 days of sitting on hot charcoal and not knowing what's going on. The uncertainty,
exactly,
and the chaos that goes through your head is that's torture. That's how you torture.
It was, you just want an answer at that point. In 10 days, and some days I was just laying there in the hospital, and then they weren't able to do any tests for procedures, was just waiting. So finally, we get to the end of that 10 days, and the head of the person who was the head of my team came in, and I knew that was going to be the day, that they kind of gave me the news. And so here we are in that moment in the hospital room. Both my parents are there. And that was when he said that they believed it was chronic myelogenous leukemia that had caused the clotting issue. And it was a very, very, that moment will always be in my mind as kind of all of the memories, all of the emotions, the fear that I felt. And when I heard the word leukemia and the instant question, chemotherapy, is that what's going to happen? What does this mean lifespan wise? And the answer to the chemo question was no. They were going to put me on a particular medication that had come out in the past year or two at that time. That didn't mean I needed chemo. And, he didn't really give me a whole lot in terms of a time clock of how long I had.
And in all fairness, that is leukemias and lymphomas. These are cancers of the blood and the lymph cells, and they are so different. Okay, leukemia is not leukemia. It's the same as if you would say all the Europeans, they're the same. Okay, right. The Italians are just the same as the Norwegians. They are all the same. That's bullshit. Okay, so therefore some leukemias, they only happen in predominantly younger children, can be very aggressive and need to have the works from, hardcore chemo, but they have got a high chance of getting killed, not the children, the tumor cells.
Yeah, the cancer.
And that's right. So that kind of leukemia that's leukemia. There are other leukemias which you basically just sit on. And these are coming in elder stages of life. They are not doing very much. They are just sitting there. You can detect them in the blood, but ultimately there's sort of supportive therapy that is being done, and they might not mean very much, and you might die of your heart attack long before you die of the leukemia. So this is equally, these are all forms of things. So you're talking apples and oranges and some kiwi fruit thrown in there. So, but you at that stage didn't know that. You only heard leukemia. Shit, I'm dead. So
or I thought I would need a bone marrow transplant, or all the things that you associate in your mind with what that means.
Exactly.
flooded in and, all the questions.
Bollocks. Okay. How did that continue? So you were still there in the hospital. Let me guess, Friday afternoon, 4:00. And by the way, we discharge you now in 1 hour. Go, bye-bye.
I think they said they were going to discharge me the next day. Like it was like, okay, well, we'll let you go tomorrow, And I was like, okay, that sounds good to me. And I was like, I'm sleeping in my own pajamas tonight because I'm tired of the hospital gown.
But they flap so nicely in the wind. Come on.
Yeah. It was just kind of like I needed the normalcy at that point, like feeling like I chose what I got to wear. And, nobody protested that. It was like, I'm going to sleep in my own clothing tonight. And
that's essentially already the start of your new journey, isn't it? Because they said, no, here's the tablet. Okay, we're going to go home and you will now be under the care of your family physician, a primary care physician. What then?
And the hematologist who had tried to do the bone marrow biopsy back in the town where I lived.
Right.
Yep. So they released me the next day, and it was kind of one of those, what do? Your life has had kind of the nuclear bomb dropped in it, and then you're like, I'm just supposed to go home, and now what? So there were weeks and probably even months of sorting through, like, what does all of this really mean? Like, what do I started kind of questioning, what I wanted to do with my life at that point a little bit more than I was before. Because, you kind of feel like, oh, now I have to make things count. I have a little bit of a motivation in life. So I start the medication. They also have me on a blood thinner to make sure I'm not clotting, and, doctor's appointments and trying to resume life. And a couple months into it, I'm seeing the hematologist, and he's starting to run tests to see if this medication is working. And he keeps saying, it looks good news. It looks like it is. And as the months go by, I actually start to lose an incredible amount of weight. So I went from probably could lose a few pounds, like being just slightly heavier than I should be, to being almost a human skeleton over the course of 6 to 8 months. And when I would go to the hematologist and he would look at this lab test, he was always focused on that. And he would ask me the question of how I was feeling. And by this point, I started to feel sick and feel worse than I ever had. And I would say to him, I don't feel well. And his answer to that statement was, you look great, which always perplexed me because I knew I didn't look well at that time. I knew I looked ill, and people in my life, friends and family, were saying, nicely, like, don't lose any more weight. You're not looking so great. So why was I being dismissed in that moment? And that was when I started to first kind of be like, something isn't adding up here. You're telling me the lab tests are showing one thing, yet physically I can see in my body I am actually declining and my health is getting worse. But I was not getting an answer. And I went to my primary doctor and I kept saying, please, can I be referred to a different hematologist? And he kept saying, well, I went to medical school with this guy and he's the best in town. And I was caught at that point because I knew in my gut that there was something that wasn't adding up and that this doctor wasn't listening to me. And yet, in the medical system, we all know you need referrals for specialists. So I couldn't just self-refer and say, I want a different hematologist. And that went on for a number of years where I still felt like, I wasn't getting better. I think I stabilized a bit with my weight at one point, but I wasn't healthy. And I wasn't getting an answer of, if everything looks so great, then why do I still feel terrible? And I even went back to the hospital that had made the diagnosis in San Francisco as an outpatient. And I tried to get a reevaluation. And that was an interesting story because I got there and after 10 days in the hospital, you'd think they'd have a lot of records on me. And I get to the outpatient clinic and she opens up a file folder and there's not a sheet of paper inside of it. And there's nothing, she didn't look at anything in the computer. And it was like, basically, why are you here? Well, don't you know my history?
Oh. Okay.
And we spent the whole hour just explaining my history and never getting a reevaluation because she didn't have my history. So that was where the wheels started falling off the bus. You know, in the beginning, it seemed like the care was great. And then it's like, why are all these things happening that are not really adding up to good care?
Fair call. Fair call. You look like a dick when your logistics behind you fall down. And for us doctors, we are running from one date to the other, from one appointment to the other, from one theater list to the other. And there is a tremendous amount of background work happening.
Right.
If the logistics behind you are breaking down and you are on a cold front, sitting there and opening this folder up and there's nothing in there, or the wrong information is in there, you look like an idiot. You feel like an idiot.
I'm sure she did.
It's awful, awful, awful. It happens once, maybe 2-3 months, maybe something like that. And that's why we try, as doctors, we try to put systems into place. We try to have teamworks. We try to do a sort of the Swiss cheese model that there are different safety nets that catch you at various levels. Even if you fall through 2-3 nets, there must be another one there. But sometimes, like in your case, the perfect storm brews up and you just cruise through these holes. And that's what appears to me at this moment in time has happened. What happened then? I mean, you're talking, 10 months down the line? That must be, or even more now?
The whole experience of the misdiagnosis was 3 years long.
Yeah.
I didn't get an answer until basically what changed was I left my graduate school program because I realized I was not really in the right field. I got different health insurance because at that time I had student health insurance. And in the US at that time I was caught. I couldn't get like COBRA. I couldn't get any other health insurance unless I got a job. So I had to get myself to the point that I could go out and get a job so I could get health insurance and get a different doctor. And that finally happened, after a number of years. I was finally in that place. So I get new health insurance. I get a new primary doctor. My first appointment with her, I say, can you please refer me to a different hematologist? And she says, sure. Pulls out her pad of paper, writes, a referral to another doctor and says, there you go. And I go to see this new doctor, as soon as I could get an appointment, bring in a stack of records that was probably about 3 inches thick because I wasn't leaving anything to chance at this point. Like every piece of paper I had.
Good on you.
I was like,
good on you.
Here you go. And he starts flipping through it right in front of my mother and I. And he says, I don't really think this is chronic myelogenous leukemia. In that appointment, just flipping through the papers. And of course he said, I can't say that for sure in this moment, I'm questioning it, but I'm going to have to run tests to confirm it. And I understood that was, the process, but it was like finally being heard after 3 years of saying, this is not adding up. I don't feel well. I'm not getting better despite all these tests that seem to show that I am.
Keep going.
So I still remember that moment too as so much different emotion, I was angry that I hadn't been listened to for 3 years. I was relieved. I was a little bit scared of what is the right diagnosis?
Well, exactly. I mean, I guess that's what I'm waiting a bit for, because here you were at 25, a young woman who is absolutely fine. Then you had a diagnosis. They put you on a tablet. Then, within a few months, life deteriorated. So, hang on. Why did it deteriorate? Was that a side effect of a medication? Was that because the underlying diagnosis was wrong? There's another disease process that was actually messing about with your life and with your health that had not been addressed yet. So where is this story going? That's automatically where I'm sort of sitting on the edge of my seat. Okay, come on, girl. Spill the beans.
I get more tests. I get another bone marrow biopsy. And finally, a different diagnosis. So that hematologist said it was polycythemia vera. So a different blood disorder.
Yep. Polycythemia vera is basically that just you are a high achiever, a super achiever in your bone marrow, where you just go on, red cells? Who want red cells? Come on, here, red cells, come on. That's basically bone marrow on speed. And it's just, why are you also slow? We want red cells, red cells. Yeah. That's it. That's it, basically. Yep. But the more red cells you have got, the more sticky the blood gets and the more likely a clot can occur. So there you go. Bloody hell.
Yep. And then he said to me, too, in that news, he said, I don't know why anyone chose the diagnosis of CML before, because the clotting off of the portal veins in all of the studies he had ever seen was never associated with it. And it was almost always associated with the polycythemia vera. So it was like, where did that diagnosis come from? He even was like scratching his head of how it had been arrived at.
And that's really, really hard, because there you have been mentioning that things were not adding up. And I think the issue is making mistakes is normal. Then not listening to a patient, or at least the perception that you're not being listened to. I think that's the hardest thing. That is basically what pisses people off. I certainly have made mistakes in my career, and I've looked a patient in the eye and said, look, this is what has happened, and I'm really, really sorry that this is what has happened. Right. In all these, well, luckily not so many incidences, but in every single time, the guys and girls were saying, look, don't worry. You're a great guy for just showing up and taking it on the chin and saying, look, I got it wrong there. For that, we appreciate you. And let's now move forward and let's find a way how we get better, kind of a thing. So this is, I hear you. I hear your frustration. That is really the key message there.
Yes. And I think if that had happened, if they had realized a few months in, 6 months in, like, this is not responding the way and reevaluated it, I think I would have, felt very differently than 3 years later. And it's like, I was the one that was constantly, why don't I feel better?
Absolutely true. So now you've got a diagnosis that still is a diagnosis. There is still a medical problem there. And obviously you have been feeling crook. Was that crookness, was that feeling not well, due to the polycythemia vera, or was it due to the medication that you were put on as a treatment for the leukemia?
I would say it was probably both. So the medication certainly had some nasty side effects. I definitely had a lot of nausea from it, just like you would if you were going through chemo. Yeah. So I would attribute some of the losing weight because it was very hard for me to, eat normally and, keep meals down. So some of it made sense that, was this medication, which ultimately I didn't even need to be on. It's one thing to suffer the side effects and actually have it be useful to you, but to have it be something you didn't need. And then I think, not being treated for 3 years and still having, elevated red cell counts and my platelets and white cells were also elevated as well. So I was, tired from that because my blood was thick. I had actually clotted off those veins a couple more times. So I had to have that procedure several times in the 3 years where they opened everything back up. So I think it was, a combination of both of those things that really contributed to me not feeling well in that time.
Once you had the diagnosis of polycythemia vera, they would have stopped the other medication and would have given you lifestyle advice. They might have even asked you to donate blood, or at least get rid of some blood. Was that part of your treatment?
Yes, yeah. And to this day, that's still part of the treatment where I go, it's basically donating blood without them actually using the blood for anything,
Correct, yeah.
Just throw it away.
Yeah. So they stop the medication and a month goes by and you're now jumping over the grassy fields into the sunset and everything is all right. The weight is coming back on. Everyone is happy. No?
It was a bit slower recovery than that, for sure. I think our bodies are amazing, but the month is maybe a little bit fast for
because after all,
things.
the underlying treatment, the underlying diagnosis is still there, and whilst the side effects might have gone away, there is still, your body has had a hammering from disease and medications for 3 years. Hell,
yes.
This is, you don't just get over that in a blink of an eye. So how did things continue? By now you were working. What were you doing? What job were you holding down?
I was working in a bank. I just got a job that had insurance, and I wasn't picky at that point because I was like figuring out where I wanted to go. And it was like, as long as you have insurance, I will take this job.
That sounds damn good to me. But there you are, basically holding down a 40-hour job, which makes you tired. And then you have got a diagnosis that makes you tired. And then you're still...
And then I actually ended up having my thyroid removed around that time. So I had a thyroid nodule. So it was like one more curveball in the medical system.
Unbelievable. So when did things change?
Kind of over the course of the next year, things were changing. And, even in that time period with the misdiagnosis, I had started to find other approaches. So I started to explore alternative modalities during that time window, because I felt like, well, heck, if nobody's listening to me and nobody's helping me over here, like, I don't know, maybe there's something else that can help me. So the journey started there. And then I think it really picked up speed after getting the right diagnosis of just, keeping exploring and trying things, and those things that I found that worked, I just kept doing them and trying new things.
Yeah. So when you say things, what are we talking about here?
So my journey into alternative lands kind of began with biofeedback. And biofeedback was something I had experienced actually as a teenager when I had really bad migraines. So I had been sent by a pediatrician at that time for biofeedback to help with that. And I remembered it in the midst of this 3-year window. And I was so anxious all of the time. And I said, I know this anxiety and this stress is not good for me. Like, I can tell, to be stressed out every day is just adding fuel and flames to my fire. So let me try something. So I referred myself basically to someone who taught me how to self-regulate, how to calm down my nervous system. And in that kind of experience too, that was when I started, to think about that as a potential career path. Like, I wasn't ready because I wasn't well enough. I was like, who am I to start working with people at this point? But it was like the glimmer started to be there. And then from there, I started going to a yoga class that was called Yoga for Healing. And I was actually referred to that by a psychotherapist I was seeing at the time for my depression. And in this time window too, the year after my diagnosis, I had lost my best friend. She passed away very suddenly. So I was thrown into even deeper grief. If you could imagine a second nuclear bomb going off in your life a year later, that was basically what it felt like. And this therapist that I saw said, there's this class that's at a local yoga studio and you really should try it. And I looked at her at first like she was crazy, because my only exposure to yoga before that was seeing people do it in a gym. And I was like, you do know I'm sick, right? Like, that I can't, because I thought it was going to be a class where I had to do a headstand or, do all of these vigorous things. And I was like, I can barely walk around some days without being exhausted. And she said, no, please just trust me. It's not what you're thinking. Just go to this class, give it a try. And it wasn't what I was thinking at all. Like, we spent most of the time lying on the floor with, bolsters and blankets underneath us and just breathing and relaxing. And I loved it, so I started getting really curious in that world. And, again, I'd never tried yoga before. And then somebody came across my path and he said, I do Reiki. Would you like to try a Reiki session? And I was like, yeah, I've never had energy work before, but I became kind of the yes person in that time period, because I was like, what do I have to lose? And that was a profound experience too of, I literally got up off of the table and I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw more energy and light in my eyes than I had that was probably about 2 years into this experience. And so after that, I was like, Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Yes, I'll try that. Anything that came across my path that sounded interesting, I tried. And then after, leaving my graduate school program and starting working in this bank and getting the right diagnosis, that was when it started to really spark for me that I really had a passion to start to help other people. It's like when I feel better enough, I really want to start learning some of these things that I've used in my own life. And so I went back and I went into a different graduate school program because I was like, I have a degree in history. What qualifications do I have to help somebody? I have a master's in history and I'm going to help you with your health problems. I was like, that doesn't seem right. So I said, I'm going to go get a master's in something called somatic psychology because I really felt that there was this importance of the body that, I didn't really want to just study psychology in a traditional way. So I went into a program and learned that, but I knew I didn't want to be like a traditional psychotherapist. I didn't want to do talk therapy. This was just kind of like giving me a framework, basically, to lay these other modalities on. So then I trained in the biofeedback and I started kind of experimenting with working with people with that. And I trained in therapeutic yoga and played in that realm for a bit too. And then I studied Reiki and I moved from California to Oregon and I started a business doing those things.
Beautiful.
Yep. And then a few years later, it's like I found other things, so I found something called Bodytalk, and that became something that I got really passionate about as well because it helped me with another problem I was having.
And it just shows that ultimately there are things out there that are so beautiful and powerful. And what these things are, these are not where someone does some magic kind of thing to you and waves a wand and the spirits out there come to us. Bullshit. All those modalities that you have mentioned have one thing in common. They use the powers that are sitting right now inside your body and are utilizing them for the right purpose. So there is, imagine a whole switchboard of switches and they're all stuck in some way. How would it be if you learn techniques where you can say, actually, dear body, can you please start healing yourself? Can you please start finding out what's wrong in yourself and then do that? And let's see which switches we've got. We've got healthy breathing. So using the diaphragm and actually releasing the diaphragm and training with that, our parasympathetic nervous system, so the vagus nerve, and trying to actually restore some order, get out of this fight and flight mode, getting into that opposite mode, which allows healing and restoration. Would that not be nice? Click. So that would be the breathing exercises, the mindfulness, the yoga, those kind of things. So you're actually starting with that. Then, if you would have gone to a village in 1880 and say one day, you guys have got a little box which you can look through, and you're going to put your food in there, and you press a thing called a button, and that button will heat up that food that you've put in there. People would have probably burned you at a stake. Okay, so let's be clear about that. So that was 1880. Fast forward 2021. Do you think there are still things that we can't really explain? That there might be energy frequencies out there that are actually very good for you? And for example, give you an example, music. Is there certain music out there that makes you feel really good?
For sure, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
music is frequencies. There are basses in there. There are drums in there that forever have caught our imagination. The drums, this goes as long as there has been human mankind on Earth. There were drums. So why is that? Frequencies. So certain frequencies are good for us, and others not so much.
Right.
Would it not be cool to learn some techniques where you can maybe strengthen some frequencies or use some frequencies? Okay, yes, I'm a doctor. I'm an anesthetist. Yes, we use drugs. Yes, I have not lost my marbles. Okay, so if there are any of my colleagues are listening in, I hope you're hearing what I'm saying. There is so much more out there where we can use powers that are residing within and that we just have forgotten about. And that's essentially the path that you have chosen. You have chosen to actually go out there and learn more about those forgotten switches, the old dusty switchboard which no one has looked at for a long time, especially in our modern hectic life, where we've forgotten that little room.
Yep, forgotten that. Yeah, we have a lot of power within us. We've gotten so used to, well, what outside of me can fix me?
Isn't it? Exactly.
I have a headache. Well, maybe I should just grab a Tylenol and take that, and problem solved. Instead of, I wonder if maybe I'm just dehydrated today, or maybe I didn't sleep enough last night. Maybe that's why I have a headache.
Exactly right. And it's so beautiful to hear that, because that should be the wellness medicine, the functional medicine that we're practicing today. That should be the attention to basics. That should be the kind of baseline that we should be working from. Instead, we're working from a baseline of essentially social media, crap food, dehydration, complete overwhelm by our surroundings, and we've forgotten to look after ourselves. And then we somehow are surprised if diseases take advantage of our body. Either the body acts against itself, autoimmune diseases, or the body can't defend itself against outsides, a chronic infection, or the body can't defend itself against inside, cancers, leukemias, lymphomas, all that. How about we just push the pause button? How about we actually talk to someone like Lyn, and actually says, hey, you got your shit together after a diagnosis that is chronic and that put you pretty much on the back foot. And now I look in your eyes and you're a bouncy person and you're having fun and you wrote a book and clearly something has changed. Right. What the hell has changed and how did you do that? And maybe is it time to come along for a ride?
Yeah. I think it is, but
and I think it's really, really important, though, Lyn, that we also put it out there that there are certain things where you need a doctor for. What I'm saying is not forgive school medicine or Western medicine or however you want to call it. No. There are certain things that can kill you, and we either pick that up that you have got that cancer and cut it out, or you are dead. You can do as however much healing you want to do. There are certain things that need a doctor. End of the story. Right. So please,
you're having a heart attack and
exactly,
you need a doctor.
Exactly.
Like, you don't want to die of a heart attack.
Your diabetes has crept up on you, and you're actually sick like a dog because you've got an infection because of your weakened immune system due to the diabetes. Well, you need antibiotics for the infection, and you need to get a doctor to get your diabetes under control. That's the first step. But then, why not start healing? Why not look into the nutrition that you're having? Why not look into fasting? And why not look into other healthy lifestyles where you actually start changing your life to such a degree that the disease itself has no more chance? And you can reverse diabetes. You can reverse immune system dysfunctions if you know what the hell you're doing. But it's not happening with a tablet, rest assured. It's happening because we are actually bringing all the modalities together to a table and actually are now saying, okay, cool. What is the first priority? Okay, save your life. Okay, let's just do that, shall we? And then, how can we improve? That's
kind of the most important one.
Well, exactly. So
the rest doesn't matter if you're dead.
And that's my point. So as a doctor, we have got a very clear crisis management approach. We go first in, regardless what it is. I don't care which crisis you throw at me. The very first thing I go in is to see the patient and do an immediate quick check. Is the guy dead or about to die? And is there anything I can do about it? That's a quick primary survey. Then I step back and get actually the more information, what is really going on. Then I go back in and say, now focused, okay, this is the problem, let's go down that. So this is a crisis management approach that suits emergency doctors, anesthetists, surgeons very, very well, and is well accepted. Same thing you need to do with wherever you are at your life. So right now, what does need to be done right now? Okay, and deal with it. And then step back. And then it's time to rethink. Okay, and that is where the healing starts. The healing in the nicest, biggest meaning of the word. What would you do differently nowadays? Would you recommend the old Lyn, maybe a year, 18 months into the diagnosis? What would you recommend that Lyn to do nowadays?
I think the first thing is there would have been no as an answer for a second opinion. I in my mid-20s, I didn't really realize how fierce sometimes you have to get and be your own advocate. But I don't think I would have accepted, oh, he's the best in town. I think I would have said, you may think he's the best in town, but I'm entitled to a second opinion.
Absolutely.
And, you need to refer me to somebody else.
Absolutely.
If I had to say it meanly, I would say it meanly.
I think you're right there, and understanding that you might be wrong. But it's still right now you have got reason enough to believe that maybe there could be another solution or another diagnosis out there, and it's only fair enough that one actually asks for that. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It is what it is.
Right. I think, it should be in a situation of a serious life-changing diagnosis. It should be kind of standard practice to be like, the second opinion doesn't sound too far off.
I like that.
Fresh eyes.
I like that.
It doesn't necessarily mean that person is a horrible doctor. It just means like, I really want to be sure, that I'm getting the best care and that something hasn't been missed in that. I think he was looking at it so much from, somebody else had made the diagnosis. And so he was just following that. And it was like, it came from this major hospital, I'm sure they're right. They know what they're talking about. Instead of saying, I don't know. This seems like something doesn't quite make sense. There's a missing puzzle piece here, and let's be curious about it.
You are also now a woman who has explored different healing strategies, you have exposed yourself to different ways of life that all can be beneficial. What would you recommend anyone out there who has been given a chronic diagnosis, and this person has been to a second opinion, and the diagnosis is still there? You have got a dodgy heart. You have got a shit lung because you've smoked 30 years. Your liver is fucked because you have drunken like a fish. And it's nice that you now stop, but after 30 years, damage is done, kind of a thing. So you've got a chronic diagnosis. And the doctor says, look, there's not much we can do now. It is what it is. How would you approach a case like that based upon your information?
Still being open to possibilities of healing. So I have long been a fan of the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and, his looking into the power of our mind and, the placebo effect. And there are people who go to these week-long events that he does and, they're basically terminal, and these people, the cancer heals. So, it's not a guarantee that will happen. But if you're just, you believe I'm at death's door and, it's the end, that's probably what you're going to get. And if you can instead shift into the power of, there is a possibility that my body could heal, and tapping into our minds, because our minds are super powerful, super amazing. How can I change out of that? I'm at a death sentence to maybe there is the possibility. What do I need to do to help myself heal from this?
And it's not an all or nothing. Let's be very clear about that. I'm always dubious when I hear, he went to someone and the cancer has gone. I'm incredibly dubious. Having said that, there are actually cases like that out there, full stop.
Right.
But it's not all or nothing. It is making the most of what you have got. Let's look at it from that angle. Sometimes you can't undo the damage of time or the damage of trauma, the damage of disease. You can't.
Right.
But there was a beautiful study when I was still a young whippersnapper doctor, where they examined the psychological makeup, the kind of I'm a survivor versus oh God, and it's all too much, and the catastrophizing, the victim versus survivor mode. And they looked at people with cancer and basically broke them all down and had basically same cancer, same stage of cancer, and then looked at survival, the survivors versus the victims. And the survivors were surviving 3 times as long or 3 times longer than the people who gave up. And that was actually quite, that was the first time that I realized, okay. And they didn't look into healing, etc. They just looked at the power of I do not give up.
Right.
And that was actually a really beautiful thing. So that will never leave me. So,
yes.
This never give up is a beautiful thing. I also have to say that I myself have gone through hypnosis, through Reiki, through other healing modalities, Bodytalk, all those kind of things. I've had sessions, and there were sometimes very clearly surprises waiting for me.
Yes.
Exactly. I went to an osteopath, and the osteopath sort of realigns you. He cracks you. He does, weird things to your spine. And
Right.
I enjoyed that. I expected that. This particular dude, I suddenly realized, he's just standing there. I'm face down, nice, relaxed there, and not much was happening. And suddenly I found this enormous weight dropping out of my pelvis. My whole pelvis went just, and I thought, what was that? And he had done nothing, absolutely nothing. Yet he did, and actually with hindsight, he did some energy healing over my lower back. And it was literally as if you had dropped me from 10 centimeters height, boof, down.
Wow.
And yeah, exactly. And that was osteopath. And by that time, I had already other healing sessions. So after the session, I turned around and said, look, just out of interest, in your practice, how much actually do you do osteopathy and how much are you doing healing? And he looked at me a bit and he said about 50-50. Yeah, but the outcome was there. That was as physical as if he would have jumped on my pelvis. So explain that to me. How the hell is that? I know what an osteopath does. I know what the realignments are. How the hell can you realign me just like that? There is something, there's more out there that we can actually explain at times. And that is just an amazing thing. So therefore, the power of our body is immense. Let's not give that up. Let's not fall into the trap that everything has to come from the outside. There's so much that Western medicine can help us. Please, I love my job. It's gorgeous, but at the same token, why not combine it with a healthy lifestyle that allows you to harness the powers that are sitting within you? Why not align it with some yoga in your case? And yoga, I love it the way you distinguish between the let's make a pretzel while I hang from the ceiling into I'm actually just lying down and breathing and learn how to use my diaphragm. Both of these are yoga, so and it just shows you how widespread different practices can be. And also, if you go to a yoga teacher, well, you don't know which particular thing you get. So therefore, you might go to someone who says, no, I've tried yoga, it's a heap of shit. Whilst someone else says, no, I've tried yoga, it was a lifesaver for me. maybe that explains to you how these two people can have such different opinions, because they maybe were exposed to very different techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So much out there. Regrettably, is there an easy way to find out what works? Not really. Not really, is it?
You kind of have to be your own guinea pig in a way. Because I've tried things too in those years that, I was like, yeah, I don't think that was really for me. And that was okay. Not everything is for everybody.
It's the same with recovery, with alcohol programs. Some people love the 12 steps. Some people think, what a bullshit. And it's the same thing. So there are many, many similarities in life. You need to figure out what works for you. But you are in the driver's seat. You are it. You get to make choices. And I think Lyn's story, Lyn, you're describing it so well, because you gave up the power towards a doctor system that in this particular case let you down a bit. And it's lovely how you actually could explain to yourself how things might have actually come together, why people acted the way they did, but also the lessons that you learned and that you give in your book to others. Be the driver in your own seat. Be the ringmaster in your circus. Don't just be the bearded lady, okay? So, yeah. So no, I love your attitude. I love your strength, and that strength is going from strength to strength. So
I certainly didn't know how strong I was when that whole story started.
Isn't it?
Certainly had taught me a lot about your own internal strength.
Isn't it? Lyn, but I mean, who will you be when you grow up? What is on the cards? What is on the horizon here for you? Where will you go?
I think it's always evolving, So it's like I've started working with hypnosis and, adding that in, because I think there's an element of working with people's minds that's really powerful. If I have clients who come in and they think, well, I heard that diagnosis and I heard it was chronic, even if they say sometimes, I don't really believe that, there's probably some part in their mind that took that on board. And we have to reprogram that, so that we can get past it.
Beautiful. You're quite right. And again, you're harnessing the power of your body. In this case, you're actually getting rid of a blockage that actually we have maybe put into our own life. Or maybe someone else as a child has put something into your mind that you take for granted because it has been so long ago and it was laid down at such an early stage that your belief system is, no, of course, that's black and white. That's so true. Yet it might be a core belief that actually does no longer suit you whatsoever. Yet you're still there. And then there is Lyn here, who uses a big screwdriver to go over that LP and just basically says, nah, sorry. 20 minutes of hypnosis. Let's try it again.
Get that out of there.
That's right, exactly. And that's.
Let's create a new belief and a new identity. Who do you want to be? Instead of what you've been told from someone else or what you convinced yourself.
Exactly. But here's a good example. So now you go to Lyn and you do 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions of hypnotherapy. That belief system is changed. Great. And now what? So if you're now not actually actively taking steps in the right direction and living a life that is meaningful, you're just falling back into a trap. Might be a different belief system that is just as hindersome, etc. But you're not taking steps forward, and that's where the ongoing path is. That's where the healing comes in. That's where you can't go once to a gym, become healthy. That's not why you eat one leaf of salad and that makes you a healthy person. No, you make little choices every day, and if you make enough of them, you will find, wow, your life changes forever. Lyn's has changed forever. She's living proof. There she is, and in a beautiful way she is, and we all can be like that, is it not? But what stops you?
Yep, mostly ourselves.
Exactly. Lyn, if people really like what they have heard there, well, first of all, your book. Show us your book.
Yes,
so that might be a good way
definitely.
of you to be known. You are not your diagnosis. And that is so bloody well right, isn't it? You could
Yep.
also change that to you are not your trauma. You are not your addiction. You are not your
Mhm.
depression. But in this case, you are not your diagnosis, because that was what started you transforming, what started you developing into this beautiful human that you are now.
Mhm.
And that's beautiful. Wow. So that's as an ebook out there as well through Kindle.
I don't. Yeah, I think it is on a. You can buy
Very
it on
good.
Amazon Kindle. Yeah.
Nice, 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 nice. So, guys, absolutely. So, look down there into the description, but also, how can they find you? Do
Yeah.
where are you?
The best way is through my website,
Yeah.
which is heartfirehealingllc.com. And I'm also on Instagram as Heartfire Healing.
Beautiful. And guys, check down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast, because I've got all her social media handles down there. So simply copy and paste or click. And whilst you're down there, press the like button and maybe leave a review if you so desire. We certainly love to hear back from you. And more importantly, press the subscribe button, because I've got so many beautiful, wonderful guests like Lyn coming onto my show. Hey, spread the word, and maybe we can make this world a little bit better. Maybe we can just plant that seed somewhere that someone says, okay, I'm ready to take action. I'm ready to kick ass. It's time to heal in the truest meaning of the word. And who knows? Maybe we can be the little candle in the darkness for someone. And in 2 years' time, that person is the candle for someone else. And maybe we can create a better world. Who knows?
Beautiful. Yeah, I love it. I have some clients that have gone on to be healers, and I always find that such a beautiful thing.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and that's what this is all about. Let's make this world a better place. Lyn, thank you
Yes.
so much for coming onto my show. I truly appreciated your candor. Your whole attitude is lovely, and the lessons that I've learned from you were very humbling. You held a mirror in front of my face, and it was for that I'm grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and have a fantastic time. Bye.